Welcome to Heather Sells NYC with your host, Heather M. Cooper. Each episode is focused on helping people navigate through the intricacies of buying and selling real estate in New York City to get the greatest value. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, heathersellsnyc.com. Now here's the host of Heather Sells NYC, Heather M. Cooper.
Good morning, Nico. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you so much. Today I have Nico Zapata, the greatest architect in the world from Niza Works. So today we are going to talk a little bit about Nico's background, his 17 years in architecture, how he helps real estate agents, and how he got into architecture. So let's begin. Nico, what had you, become interested in architecture? Were you like a little boy when you became interested?
Well, what's funny is that I didn't become interested in architecture until high school. Back in high school, we took a technical drawing class that just sparked my interest because at the time, I actually didn't even know what architecture or an architect was. This is already in high school. So the moment I completed that class, I told my teacher about my interest, and they told me that I should follow up with an architecture class. But once I started taking that class of architecture, I started realizing that a lot of my interest in buildings and seeing things being created back when I was young was architecture. I just didn't realize that that's what it was. So it kind of came all in full circle once I started taking the architecture class back in high school.
Wow, I love how it all comes together from
Yes.
from when you were little until realizing that, oh wow, this is really what I want to do. So so then after high school, you decided to become an architect. And what types of projects do you work on
Uh,
in New York City?
so I gotta say I've been blessed with working on some really fun projects. The majority of the projects that we work on nowadays are condo co-op renovations, a lot of brownstone and townhouse private home renovations. We do projects in New York City as well as some of the outer suburbs of New York City. And we really do get the chance to work with some fun clients. And we the best thing that we get to do is just try to bring their vision to life. A lot of times people have an idea, they provide us with Pinterest boards as well as just write-ups of their wish list. And I always tell my clients, don't stop unless I tell you that you need to hold back on anything. Just let's see what we can do to try to bring your dreams to life.
I love that. Pinterest boards and bringing dreams into it's a reality. I mean, working with real estate clients, buyers. I mean, everyone has dreams. So I really love that you really make that a reality for them, and you turn their wishes into actuality.
Yes.
So yeah, and I love when you say that, like, you have fun. And because if you didn't have fun, then you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, right?
That's correct. I definitely I'm a big advocate for doing what you enjoy doing, and I really do get the chance to wake up every day and really put our best foot forward for our clients.
And what is fun to you, like, about architecture? Is it actually, turning the dreams into reality, or is it going, or is it, just creating?
Well, for me, my favorite part is definitely definitely seeing it come to life. I love the fact that I can put things on paper, draw them, really get into the way we try to create it. But when it comes time to actually give it to a contractor to actually bring it to life and see it completed, that's the best part for my end. And I really do enjoy seeing other people's reactions when they see their work completed. I love to see the process as well as getting to that point. And at the end, we just going through a walkthrough with a client and say, did we complete what you requested? And just getting the affirmation from these clients really is the best.
That's fabulous. That is really great. And what would you say would be like the most difficult part of the process? Is having to deal with co-ops and all their rules and regulations and not being able to sometimes to carry out what the client may want and their vision because of the co-ops rules per se?
Well, interesting enough, we deal a lot with co-ops and condos where we understand their rules very well. We come into projects letting clients know, listen, we understand that there's certain things that you want to do, but there's only so many things that we're allowed to do. Because besides the co-op and condo rules, we also have codes and requirements. There's a lot of rules that go into the requirements of what we can create for our clients. However, I think the most difficult part would be budget. I think budget would be it. There's who wouldn't want to do something where it's an unlimited budget? But it's just the reality is that our clients don't have endless pockets, and we need to make sure that we get something that done very well at the price point that they're looking for. Many times, I like to tell our clients that we like I mentioned earlier, I ask our clients to provide me with their wish list, and let me be the bearer of bad news in the terms of like something you can and cannot do, because a lot of times we have to think outside the box of how we can create something differently so that we can meet their budget. A lot of times somebody might want, let's say, a kitchen that is 20 feet long for example, but it might not meet the budget that they think. But sometimes we just think about it and say, well, maybe we can get you that kitchen, not in the material that you wanted, but we can try to get you that size in a different material that lowers the budget. Or maybe we modify some of your countertops that won't come out as expensive as you wanted to. And so we always try to find this balance of material, time, and finances to make sure that we can give them as much as we can.
Right. No, that's great. That is really great because there's always lots of demands from clients, and you have to make sure that you adhere to their budget and of course their expectations as well. And what types of projects do you really light up from? Is it, I mean, just what do you get excited about?
I I I, I gotta say, one, it's very interesting sometimes when we have existing spaces that we just transform. A lot of times it's whenever we deal with a lot of gut renovations as well. But when you deal with gut renovations, again, we're going to deliver something brand new. And but one, but it's there's something very special when you take an existing space and restore it or just renovate it. A lot of times, something as simple as modifying lights inside of a space can just brighten up the space and just give it brand new life. A new coat of paint
Wow.
might make a big difference inside of a space. And sometimes we work with again, New York City has a lot of history. So taking advantage of some of these ornate, let's say, moldings and corn and yeah, and crowns and bases, and strip them. Like a lot of them have like 50 years worth of layers of paint on them, and stripping them and bringing them back to their original form. those type of it's really something special to enjoy those type of projects where we bring these existing spaces back to life.
Yeah, I love that. Like the crown moldings and the pre-war charm and just all of the New York City has so much architecture that one really enjoys. Like say if you go from the Upper West Side to the brownstones to the Upper East Side, like there's just so much variety and there's just so much to enjoy about New York City, and even
It
about
definitely is.
right, and even about co-ops. Some people don't like co-ops because they're older buildings, but just the charm of a pre-war co-op is, I say, just gorgeous. What it has to offer, the beam ceilings, right?
I agree, and especially it's something very interesting for people who walk into a new building or a pre-war building. Just like, for example, the lobby itself makes a big difference. There's just certain things in building codes that when we have to worry about, and zoning codes that we have to worry about floor area, that really doesn't make large, big lobbies that we used to have that feasible nowadays. So that's why you really don't see them in a lot of these new buildings. But when you look at some of these old pre-war buildings and just start walking into these big, expansive lobbies before you go into your home, again, there's some charm to them.
Exactly. Like there's just you know from yeah, I would just say charm
Yeah.
is is the actual word. And then when you see some, but what about some landmark buildings um,
Oh,
in New York City? Like, what would you say your favorite building is
uh,
in New York City?
Interesting enough, my favorite building in New York City is actually the Seagram building, which is very interesting because it's a little bit more on the modern side. The Seagram building, it's on Park Avenue, and what happened what happened there is that the architect for that building really brought in at the time a new idea of steel and glass. So I do have, as much as I do love the charm of the history of New York, I also love innovation as well. So that at that time, that was a very good way to innovate, building buildings and going tall and making them feel light. I have a big passion for making something grand feel very simple. So that's definitely one of my favorite buildings in the city.
I love that, making it feel grand but simple. It's
Yes,
like New York City is definitely on the grand side.
correct. Exactly. We
Oh,
get a lot of it. We get a lot of it. A lot of other cities try to compare to New York City. And again, even for people within New York City, they see Manhattan as like the city. And once you leave Manhattan, it's like, well, we're not really in the city because you can see the changes and the differences. But even looking at New York City as a whole, we do get a lot of grandness and we get a lot of variety in spaces overall.
right, exactly. There's definitely a lot of there's loft spaces, there's certainly brownstones, there's small spaces, three
Yes.
bedroom spaces, and also do you work on say commercial spaces, or do you work on retail spaces ever?
We do, and we in the on the commercial side, we have multiple projects for office spaces where we renovate the interior of a lot of these office spaces. Many times it happens when people are in their offices for a very long time and they just need just a uplift of their space itself.
Mhm.
And what makes a big difference there is the fact that it really helps with people who are working in the space with their just with their uh, just how well they work better in the project or in whatever work they do. It really helps them be more efficient when we renovate a lot of these spaces. We start bringing in, let's say, new technologies, or we start bringing in modifying lighting, be a little bit more task oriented. So a lot of these office spaces that are existing are very dated, and there are a lot of options. Something even as simple as having modifying furniture where you have the option from sitting down or standing up to work. A lot of people prefer to stand up, so we do a lot of office space clients. We also have clients where we do some restaurants, and those are fun because it gives us the option to create themes inside spaces. A lot of restaurants want to be
What
themed.
kind of themes?
Exact. So, for example, like we have one client where their theme was they had a restaurant. They have a restaurant. They're called the King of Fish. So they wanted to have a fish theme. So the restaurant was designed with a theme of a boat and being within the boat, being underwater and things like that. And they sell a lot of different Mexican style food with the theme of fish. So it was a really fun project to work on. And then that same client, it created another restaurant for a meat theme. So that one is a lot more rustic and a lot more it gives a more of a, like the backyard barbecue style house space. So it's really fun working with some of these restaurants because you get to provide them with a theme for that works out well with the restaurant. So that way the people who are eating there gets the entire ambiance of the space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love that. I mean, it definitely feels like you can use your creative energy when you talk to these owners and really feel and really just use um, all of the entire process.
Yes, definitely.
That
A lot of times they come out with ideas, and anybody else would probably other people probably thinking that, like, what are you thinking of? That's not going to work. But once it comes to life and they see it, people say, okay, I get it now.
I love that. I love that. I would love just to, going to a restaurant and knowing and understanding the background and what it took to get it to come to life. Like all of these things don't just take 5 minutes. It's
That is
probably
correct.
like sometimes it could take what years of planning, perhaps.
Very true. Very true. Sometimes it can happen. Sometimes it starts off with an idea that has to get modified and molded many times. Again, sometimes like I mentioned before, budget becomes a concern sometimes, where you have to you think something's going to be worth a certain amount, and then you start getting pricing back, and then we have to deal with modifications to meet the budget. This happened. This was very evident during when the pandemic started, because a lot of material prices started going up. So a lot of our projects that we had that were in budget and planning on starting and moving forward had to take a step back because all the prices started going up for construction. So everything had to be rethought of and replanned and recreated and redesigned so that it can meet budgets.
That's interesting. And are prices and materials still high, even though the pandemic is behind us?
They're they did level off, but they leveled off on the high end. So that's kind of what ended up happening. So it's kind of like you get to a point where that's it. The materials are a certain cost, and it's very rare that they drop prices. That's really like at the end of the day, they figured out that all right, people are buying them at this price, so that's it. It's where it's at. And unfortunately, it's the end user or the owner, the one that gets that hurts the most because they're the one who has to pay that bill.
Right, right. Yeah, I can imagine that it's difficult for the owners, but I assume that they have no choice if they want to move forward with their restaurant or renovating their apartment or their office. It's
Correct, correct. Yeah.
what
One
they
thing we've one thing we started doing a lot with clients is creating phases for a lot of their projects, because sometimes they can only do so much at a certain time. So we try to think about ways that they can maybe do a portion of their project now, and maybe a couple of years later do another portion of their project once funds start rebuilding for them. So phasing is one of the good ways to try to help them out and try to get them with that end goal that they're looking for. It just might take a little longer.
Well, that does sound like a really great idea. So this way you can have them on track to really get what they want. And so they really know where they need to get to. If they need like $1 million and then plan it out 300, 300, and 300,
That's correct.
how they
Yes.
can and how they can get there. So
Yes.
that's great, because you it seems like you always give clients that vision, and you plan for today and then the long term goal.
Correct. Yeah, when I tell clients I'm going to be the bearer of bad news, I usually try not to say, you know what, this is just not going to happen. It's usually trying to say, listen, we can try and make this happen. It might take you longer than expected, or it might not be exactly what you wanted. We have to modify a little bit, but the goal is still to try to get them as much as they can.
Right, exactly. It's like a lot of times when I work with clients and they have a certain budget that they need, and sometimes their budget doesn't match what they want. So
That's right.
you really have to just manage their expectations, and it really sounds like you're good at managing expectations so they can trust you and get what they want in the long term, right?
That's what we hope to do. Definitely. Hmm.
No, that's really great. And how do you help real estate agents, and how can you help me with your next project? I know you have helped me, and you have helped my clients, and we're appreciative of that. But just in case other real estate agents are watching this, and they don't realize that they should call an architect before they call a contractor. Can you tell them about when they should call you, and for what type of projects?
A lot of times I ask real estate agents to get me involved as early as possible. If they want to get some advice on things, so one of the best things that I can give real estate agents is just the knowledge of whether something is possible. Many times their clients are looking for spaces, and they just don't have the vision of the possibility of creating a different space in what they're looking for. So let's say somebody is looking to buy a condo or co-op that is dated. They might only look at the fact that it's dated and might just not have a feeling that they can live in this space. But the idea having a real estate agent reach out to us to try to give their clients some vision, some possibilities of what can happen in these spaces is one of the big things. Like, for example, we have clients many times that they enter these spaces and say, you know what, I wish I can have, let's say, a bigger bathroom or a bigger kitchen or more light in my space. And we can give them that information ahead of time, so that they can be a little bit more in tune with what the expectations are in the spaces that they're looking to get into. So it's very helpful to get us into some of those conversations very early, like just as a consultant for some of these clients of theirs. And it's also one of the other very big items where we help real estate agents is whenever they have clients who are developing. Many times, real estate agents are helping their clients look for space, whether it's an existing building in there, whether it's an empty
Mm,
lot, but they're looking for the idea of developing the space.
mm,
So they're asking us whether or not they can add floors to the space, they can create a certain amount, how many bedrooms or how
mm,
many apartments they can get inside this building. If it's a conversion, like let's say if they want to convert an office space to a residential space or a residential space to an office space, vice
mm,
versa, they can definitely reach out to us and we can let them know what the possibilities are in those spaces, because they are rules that have to be followed. We have, besides building code, we have zoning requirements.
right.
are certain things that when anytime we talk about zoning, it just means that there's certain uses that are allowed in certain spaces. Many times you're in a residential neighborhood, and a lot of people ask us about whether or not they can uh, have, let's say, a restaurant downstairs, and depending on the zone, they might or they might not. Uh, like doctors' offices, schools, little things like that. People are asking, like, after I create this space, can I lease out to these type of uses? And we let them know, yes, it will work, or no, it will not work because of different zones. So we help a lot of real estate agents get that information
Mhm.
and try to be as exact as, or at least, again, it's not until we really get into the nitty gritty, it's tough to be exact, but at least we give them direction. And that way their clients can have direction and understand what's really and truly possible with their spaces.
Right. No, it's so important when it comes to real estate agents and looking to see what's possible because clients do have expectations. So, when I work with my buyers, a lot of times I get, I'll call you for advice or I'll call contractors because buyers want to know, can they break down walls? Can they open up this kitchen? And a lot of times I don't know. I'm not sure if it's structural. And that's where you come in, where you just look at the floor plan and you say, okay, no, can't break down the wall, or yes, it's just that's where your skill set is invaluable to real estate agents. I mean, more than just that, of course. And I was just thinking, and what about I'm assuming that when it comes to conversions, like rental to condo conversions, do you get involved as well? Is that similar to um, what you were discussing?
Yes, so we do get involved in that, and what happens is a lot of projects as an architect. There's many things that we can do by ourselves, but there's many things we cannot do by ourselves. A lot of times we need a team, we need consultants, we need to work with other people
Mhm.
to get projects done. And for example, like conversions from condos and co-ops, or from a rental to condo conversion, we need attorneys involved. There's a lot of documentation that's required to get to get the space legal as a condo. So what we do on our end is create the space to work as a unit, and then we use the attorneys to convert that from a rental to a condo. So we do get involved because there's a lot of different things that have to get involved on the architectural side. Besides the legality, there's offering plans that need to be created. There's square
Mhm.
footages requirements that need to be involved, and sometimes we even help condos and co-ops start creating their rules of what things are allowed, especially in some of the amenity spaces. There's a lot of spaces that are, let's say, are available to all the people who are living in the building, like a deck, for example, or rooftop. But
Mhm.
we might have to put limits on like what can be done in those spaces for fire protection reasons, for weight limits, for structural purposes, even on balconies, for example. A lot of times we help condos and co-ops create rules about what can be put in. Like, let's say if you want to have a planter, this planter can only be a certain type, certain weight, has to be properly secured, so that way that the building can be protected from any potential risks.
That's so interesting because there's so many risks when it comes to buildings and making sure the building is sound. Something when I was showing buyers this past week was local law 11. Now, when you're showing clients, you're like, well, why is this up? How long is it up for? And what comes with local law 11 are sometimes assessments. Now, for those of us that are listening, like, what is local law 11, and why is that so important to every single building in New York City? And I believe it's important for buildings of a certain number of units. Is that accurate?
It's actually based on height, floor numbers of the unit. So Well, Local Law 11, the Department of Buildings modified the name to the Facade Inspection Safety Program, so it can be a little bit more knowledgeable about what it actually is supposed to do, and it's supposed to make sure that the facade of a building is safe. So what the for buildings that are over 6 stories tall, the Department of Buildings want these buildings to actually get the facade inspected every 5 years. And what that does is make sure that one, that the building is safe, and there's nothing in the build on the facade of the building or on the top of the buildings. There's nothing there that actually can cause any danger. But it's also predominantly to make sure that the people and the pedestrians are safe as well. New York City is a very pedestrian neighborhood or city. There's people
Mhm.
walking in front of the buildings day in, day out. And unfortunately, there has been some tragedies that has happened where things have fell off a building and people have unfortunately died from it. So what the Department of Buildings is trying to do here is trying to avoid some of that. But one of the things that we have to be aware of, because this program is only for buildings that are over 6 stories tall. But how about buildings that are 6 stories and under that are not required to do this? One of the things that we want to make sure that building owners do is still maintain their property, because something
Mhm.
falling off of a 6 story building or a 5 story building can seriously still injure somebody who is just walking by on just a regular day. But when you speak about these assessments, it's true. It can lead to a lot of assessments because uh, a lot of buildings might not have gotten this done for many, many years. And or what can also happen is that something in a building that might have been small 5 years ago can in another 5 years or even in a year later could have developed into something major. Leaks, for example, is one of those big things. Water is very destructive to buildings.
Mhm.
So something that might have started as a small little roof leak could have created a major issue on the facade of a building where all of a sudden space like spans of bricks are falling out just because so much water has gotten in behind those bricks. And once it freezes and then uh, and it thaws afterwards, it just things start popping out. So maintenance is very big for buildings. We have to make sure the building owners maintain their buildings.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I have seen so many every other building that I show has facade work, and I always have to explain to my client what it is, why they're doing it. And when they don't have assessments, I'm actually surprised. But one building that I showed the other day had $1,000 assessment a month,
Wow.
and that was quite high. And then I second guess, is this a good building for my client to invest in if they have such a high assessment?
Well, it's good that you, as a real estate agent, know that, because a lot of people are not aware that these buildings are required to do that, and they're not aware of how the ramifications of that towards their end user, towards the people who they're selling to. So a lot of times it's just a surprise. Sometimes these assessments are not even just like facade and safety. Like sometimes it can be an elevator, it can be sprinklers, it can be a lot of different things that can happen in just the maintenance of a building just to comply with the current codes, because the reality is that codes are changing and codes are being created uh, on very often to make sure that the safety of the people using the building is seen as the most utmost priority.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. How do you keep track of all of these codes? Is your continuing education, like myself as a real estate agent, I take continuing education every 2 years. Do architects have to do the same to learn what's changing and keep apprised?
They definitely. So what's interesting is that it's not required continuing education, but if you want to stay on top of the type of work you do, it's continuing education that you should do. So,
Mhm.
for example, when it comes to code and requirements, the building code changes every so often. For example, What changes now more often is the energy code, because there are, especially in New York City, there are a lot of energy. There, like I think every mayor since Bloomberg has been creating very big energy targets for the
Mhm.
city, and the energy code has been getting updated constantly. So what the Department of Buildings do for us is that they actually create workshops, and it's up to us to
Mhm.
attend those workshops, and so that we can stay up to date with the changes of the laws. But besides just the building code items, there's a lot of local laws that are created on like it can be created on a yearly basis that we have to stay on top of. So it's always good as a professional to go back and look at what's being updated ever so often and what's being created. And we do also utilize, like I mentioned, it takes a team sometimes. We also have code consultants that we utilize
Oh, that's
and reach out to make sure that we're staying on top of the latest codes and requirements, because sometimes it's a hard task for us to monitor all of it. So there are people who are specialized to look at this, and we reach out to them to make sure that we're compliant.
oh, I never knew that there were specialists that were code specialists. Like
Yes,
that's just like a specialist for everything here,
yes.
isn't it? And what about you had mentioned, I mean, as we're talking about laws like local law 97, that's like a big hot topic. Is that something that you get involved with?
Well, it's
Like,
we do, but in so for our firm, a lot of the retrofits and modification usually comes in when we're doing the project as a whole.
mhm,
A lot of times for other more specific local laws, sometimes you can actually hire directly contractors and agencies to look at those items separately. And
mhm.
sometimes you actually can get involved with some of those directly through your managing agent. A lot of times they have consultants that are very specific to a lot of those local laws. And we really want to make sure that they actually have the best people involved uh, with um, with local law 97. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of big targets being made for just buildings being more energy efficient, being sustainable. So when you're looking at it as a building as a whole, uh,
Mhm.
sometimes the Department of Buildings is a little bit more realistic and says for any new renovations meet the requirement of the local law. But there are some local laws out there where it requires a massive retrofit to an entire building. So it's very important for, let's say, a tenant or an owner to really speak with their managing agent about what's happening with their building and trying to meet these local laws. And building boards again have to be aware of these building owners, building boards, managing agents. uh, Sometimes we just consult them just so that they can be aware of what needs to be done with a lot of these buildings to just keep them up to date with all the requirements.
And do you think, I know I have a couple of buyers right now that were concerned about, could there be possible assessments? Because they think that, co-ops and condos have to, come up to code. And basically, I think by 2025, and a lot of my owners are or my buyers are concerned about the letter grades, the
Correct.
D's and the C's. And it's alarming. It's like when restaurants came out with
Yes.
the A's and the B's, and people were like, "Oh my God, I'm not going to go there because it's a D."
Correct.
It should one of my buyers not buy if a building says D?
Well, one thing I tell people is don't look at those and think of it as a bad thing yet. It's just the fact that the city is dated. There has been time that the city has created things. Again, one of the most inefficient things in this building is in this city is single pane windows. and it's just everywhere because a lot of these are older buildings, and there's a lot of leakage through single pane windows. But can those be modified? Yes. So when people look at it, yes, the building may have a low grade for energy efficiency, but that doesn't mean that your space needs to be that way. That's a building wide thing versus your space. So something as simple as modifying your light bulbs to LED lighting goes a long way in just pushing forward towards those requirements of energy efficiency.
That's great to know. Thank you so much. And one last question before we wrap it up. What would be your dream project?
Heather, this is a good one. You know what? I think at this point, especially with the cold weather looming in the city, I would love to work on a resort project overseas. It would be nice to just design an entire beach resort in a space, and not just design it, being able to be there to actually
Mm.
watch it getting done and enjoy the space. Yeah, I think just being in my own in my office, in my computer, creating the space and not enjoying it would be detrimental. I want to actually be involved in the entire project.
Yeah, and you certainly want to enjoy the beach after and enjoy the
Exactly.
project once it's done.
100%.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Nico, for your expertise and spending the time with me. And I appreciate it. If anyone has any questions about architecture, please feel free to reach out at the contact information below. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Heather. It's a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Bye.
You've been tuning into Heather Sells NYC with your host, Heather M. Cooper. You can find more episodes on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, heathersellsnyc.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.